Welcome, everybody, to the interview with Michael Feeley in my series of 45 speakers for 45 minutes, 45 days, 45 interviews. And I believe, Michael, that you are number 11. Oh,
nice.
So, do you have any thoughts about that?
Absolutely. Number 11, the return soul, the gateway in the tree of life that takes you through the portal back to the gods. So thank you very much for
that. What a beautiful little nugget there. So, Michael, I've listened to your talks before. You come in waves with me over the years, and your kind of ascension, your own involvement, is amazing to see, and your knowledge is vast, and I know that the presentations you do sometimes could go on for weeks. I think is the phrase. So how do you formulate your ideas? How do you study? Are you academic? Do you go in? I know some people study subjects, some people study authors. How does it work for you?
Well, if you read my school reports, then my teachers are describing a very substandard child. So by no means was I ever an academic. But I have critical thought, and I can look at things and I can work them out. And there's a number of ways in which that happens. One, I will just see things when I read them. I will read between the lines. I will get information that comes from a higher frequency, a higher place, which enables me to get a question and an answer in the same millisecond of energy. I will look, as I say, I will look at ancient texts and just have an instant recognition of what they are. And in the beginning of all this research, I began to look at individual civilizations as being just that, individual, but then actually realized relatively quickly that all of these civilizations were working together with the same message, but it was expressed in a different way, under a different name of a god or a deity, with different symbology, with different shaped spiritual buildings, but nevertheless, they were all referring to the same thing. And that thing is the illumination of our mind. And the illumination of our mind is what some people would call the Christ. So the Christ character was never an individual character. It is a reference to all of our potential. But it was personified into a singular character, so that those who wanted to keep the truth of ourselves away from ourselves could capitalize on the fact that now everybody's looking for this external savior under this personification of what really was an earlier Gnostic Illuminati secret teaching. And that is really some of the processes of how I do it, through, say, research, through instant recognition, through information that comes through just having what starts as a seed of an idea, what if, and then I follow that through up until the growth of the tree, really. And that's, there's many different ways of doing it. You know, the first thing is to, of course, recognize that the writings, the geometric shapes are telling us a little bit more than what we think they are. And when you start from that perspective, you are looking for more and you are finding it.
That's fantastic. So do you find, was there a tipping point, Michael, where you had little seeds of information? Did you find that the kind of the process, the evolution was quite steep at the beginning, in terms of your knowledge, gaining the knowledge, and then when something was put in front of you, you could instantly recognize it because of another point? Did you get to like a critical mass of information, or was it just coming as a complete flow?
Well, how it started, really, I became literally a daily or nightly experiencer. And that's, even as a child, you know, I had an open mind. I was asking adult questions in relation to some of the biblical, things, some of the biblical stories. And even at age of 6, 7, and 8, I was having these adult conversations with myself. Now, could these things happen? How could they happen? Are there any truth in what's being said? So I always had that open mind. But to start for me, as I say, it was an experience, and a day didn't go by going up to the years 2007, 2008, 2009. It was literally every day I was experiencing some kind of phenomenon. So that kind of opened me up. And then when the experiences dwindled, even though they never disappeared, then I began to get messages of a different kind. And these messages were ancient secrets, ancient knowledge, ancient wisdom, which enabled me to piece together and put a blueprint together for the whole of the ancient world. And in the beginning, when you started to piece these things together, it's laborious, it's hard work. I would sometimes read reports, research reports, scientific reports for 4 or 5 hours just to find 1 or 2 words that were relevant. And then as you get more established, as you get better, as you become more fluid in the way in which you think and the way in which these ideas come, it becomes easy. So what was once 4 hours becomes 4 minutes, and you basically become a well-oiled machine. And that's what's happened through the years. What started off as a laborious, difficult task of piecing it together has now become extremely easy, that I almost trip over the information.
Yeah. So just talking about, you talk about the Christ, and I'm really interested. I'm feeling that some of this hidden knowledge is now becoming. At the beginning of one of my talks, Michael, I have the Mark Passio diagram, and it talks about the esoteric becoming exoteric, and how the esoteric hidden secrets are now actually just becoming widespread. Do you think I've got something there? Because it feels like that. We're starting to talk about things that we weren't talking about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What humanity needs to realize is that we are all the chosen race, not just factions of humanity. They label themselves the chosen race and the chosen ones, but they're not. It is the whole of humanity. We all have the same star lineage. We all have the same cosmic bloodlines. We all have these things that come from the same place. But there were factions of society that realised this, and they wanted to stop you understanding about you. So they put themselves on this pedestal. They put themselves with this elite secret society knowledge and everything else, which they are, because they've retained it. They've stolen it and retained it. But the veil is beginning to break. And there are many people that wanted to tell you, but they could not. So how could they tell you without being killed for telling you? They would encode it, they would encrypt it, they would put it into paintings, they would put it into monoliths, they would put it into pyramids and geometric buildings. And these things were telling us the truth of ourselves and who we are. But it was set at a high bar, so it wouldn't be revealed until we were capable enough of jumping over that high bar. So the information didn't reduce itself. We had to uplift ourselves. And as more and more people uplift their self, they're now becoming level with the bar that was set. And as you become level with the bar that was set, you are now able to see what was encrypted. So there is a large proportion of society that still hasn't got it yet. There are more and more people who are starting to have the realization and starting to reintroduce that information. Now, in a long time ago in ancient Egypt, which mainstream tell you that the Great Pyramid is about 3,500 years old, but I've dated the Great Pyramid at 73,440 years old. So the Egyptian civilization as we know it is far older than we imagine. Now, this information has been time capsuled since then, and it was time capsuled to re-emerge in our year 2001 AD. That is when society had the re-emergence of ancient knowledge. And since that time, more and more people are becoming level with the bar that was set. And that is what I would like to express. More and more people are getting it, and they are sharing that information throughout the world.
That's interesting you mentioned that date, because in 2001, I discovered Sumeria, and the story of Sumeria. And that was when I literally, and the first thing that got me was, hold on, we've always been told that Egypt was the ancient culture, and then suddenly you've got the whole Sumerian, and not only that, but Sumeria's got about 7 different names: Arcadia, Mesopotamia, Babylonia, Persia. You know, just and it dwarfs Egyptian. That no, it doesn't dwarf Egyptian history, but it dwarfs our received version of Egyptian history. And it's just like, hold on, why were we not ever taught any of this? And I suddenly realised that it was all, we were all put into a box. All our education was in a box. And for me, in 2001, it really blew my mind. I mean, you can talk to my wife about this, but I had folders full of it. I was just rattling off all this stuff, and I was just really getting into it, because I always thought when I was young, I had this one question, and I was like, why don't we know who we are and where we've come from? Yeah. And I just asked that question. I'm still asking it now, you know. But it's that is an amazing question that we don't know. And why don't we know who we are and where we've come from? You know, so yeah.
Because the people who do know, which is encrypted in the Freemasonic blazing star, which the Egyptians called the Ra star, which is the place of the 3 suns, which is close to the constellation of the Pleiades, which you follow by following the stars of Orion's belt. They are telling us where we're from. Now, when you look at the Sumerian culture, one of the most famous things to come out of the Sumerian culture, of course, are the Anunnaki scrolls. But the Anunnaki I've been able to rewrite. And the Anunnaki are the pharaohs of Egypt. So it actually goes back to Egypt that created the Sumerian culture, because the Anunnaki are the pharaohs of Egypt. So you have these ancient societies that are borrowing information off each other. And as I say, in the beginning, I saw these civilizations as being an individual civilization, segregated, secluded, and blocked off from the rest of the world, but they're not. Now, when you look at, as I just said, about the Ra star, the blazing star, which is designed within the Vatican floor plan, the land plan of the Vatican, which is written in the face of Mars, which is written in the face of the Sphinx, which is written in the 50 pyramids of Egypt. It tells you where we're from. And we all have the same cosmic lineage. But the people that understand this want to put themselves as the elite, as the chosen ones, when realistically they understand that humanity as a whole is the chosen race of the same cosmic lineage. So your Sumerian scrolls, your Anunnaki story, is an Egyptian story.
That makes total sense. That it is, you know, and would you say that it's been it's a worldwide thing, right?
And beyond the world.
And beyond the world, yeah.
You have monoliths and monuments, all indicating this on different planets and the moons of different planets all across the solar system.
Yeah.
You know, so again, you have the famous Sidonian city on Mars, which holds the pyramid, which holds the face on Mars, which I've said relates to the human origins of the Ra star, the blazing star of Masonry. And if you look mathematically at the face on Mars, it is a perfect match for the face of the Sphinx. So they are pointing where we're from, and where the pharaohs, the Anunnaki, those from heaven to earth came, are really from, which is the Ra star. So when you begin to realize who we are and that all of us are equal, all of us are equal is not the friend of people who want to keep us unequal.
Yeah.
So they put themselves on this pedestal and they put the rest of us as irrelevant, as the dead, as the Vulgate, because it puts them on the pedestal and they have all of this knowledge of our origins, our self, how we elevate ourselves back to our origins. But they kept that from us. You know, thou shalt not steal refers to those who have stolen your rightful inheritance, which is wisdom and knowledge. Now, when people start to realize this and put this information back into society, then it makes people realize, or at least the people who want to hear, it makes them realize their true divinity. And it makes them realize that we are all divine, we are all sovereign, we are all from the same cosmic lineage. And if you realize that, no one can have power over you. You don't worship anyone, you don't look up to anyone. because by worshipping and idolizing, you are subduing your own divinity. Now, the whole of the religious system is the carnal mind. It is the lower mind. And it keeps you there because you are worshipping things that are now greater than you.
Mm.
They are the creation of man to keep man down. And Christ is one of them.
Mm. Do you feel that there is this kind of great awakening? You know, we hear this phrase. Do you feel that there is a wave of an evolution of our consciousness? Because I really feel it, and I see the conversations that people have, and we're talking about things that was much smaller groups of people 10 years ago, and now people are talking about. I mean, the Anunnaki. When I was reading, Zachariah Sitchin and stuff, and Lawrence Gardner all those years ago, no one. I mean, I was just by myself, and now you can go on Telegram and people are, just do. It's just everywhere. So there clearly is an optical, there's an optical confirmation for me that these stories are coming out and the truth is coming out. So what do you think?
What I think is there is a great awakening because it's written as a celestial narrative. When you understand the original science, which was the stars, you were able to predict what we deem to be the future, which is not the future. It's really the now, the past, and the present all in one. But when you're able to read the celestial narrative, you're able to prophesize, and it is written that there will be a grand awakening. So it is inevitable. The issue I have with, like you say, many years ago, there was only very few people who were aware of the Anunnaki story. And now, every time you go on the internet, there's hundreds of people talking about the Anunnaki story.
Yeah.
But the problem with it is they are all towing the official line, which is not the truth. Yeah. So you can have an internet of information, but if it's false information, who does it serve? The Anunnaki story is not what Zachariah Sitchin has told you. Now, if I go to a UFO conference or a UFO community and tell them that, I get the same kind of reaction as if I go to a Christian church and tell them that Christ doesn't exist. Because they are really just absolutely just gripping with their claws onto this ideology.
Yeah.
So you can have a society and an internet based of a flow of information, but it is a false flow of information. And the hundreds of people that I see talk about the Anunnaki online and other places talk about the Zachariah Sitchin version of the Anunnaki, which is not true. Yeah. It is a metaphor for an Egyptian.
Yeah, I'm well aware of that. I saw Carly Spell recently at an event. She was talking about the Anunnaki, and I said it's a psyop.
Yeah,
I said it's false light.
It is false. It is.
And she went, "Oh, I had a feeling it was," because clearly, that story is we're divine beings, and we've come from divine source. Yeah. So how could we have been genetically modified and had all this nonsense? So it's interesting, but it's slowly coming out, and I think actually that idea of false light is a really strong one. Out of the fire into the frying pan, different narratives that catch people, and there's still these rings around the truth. And people are very gullible, aren't they? I hate to say that. I shouldn't say that, but
no. You see, when you have the likes of the word church, it comes from the word "circe," which means circle. So the original churches were your stone circles. Yeah. So the Christian church tries to hide its pagan origins, but it can't, because the word church is a pagan stone circle. Now, when you look at circles in Sumerian, they write a large circle as 3,600. What does that tell you? Well, they tell you that that's the orbit of Nibiru. What is Nibiru? It's the hidden circle of the duet, which in Egypt is the afterlife, the next world. And you have this hidden circle, which is Egyptian, which is planet Nibiru, which is not a planet, it is a hidden circle of the heavens, where the Pharaohs, the Anunnaki, used as a portal to get to the next world. The Anunnaki Sumerian scroll story, as presented, is not a nonsense. And anybody that wants to give you the Zachariah Sitchin official Sumerian scrolls are talking nonsense, because it is not true. No. It is true in terms of it is a metaphor for a truth, but it is not as it has been depicted, as it's been presented.
Yeah.
So you can have as much false light as you want on the internet, and as people are going to go and see through that false light, they're going to just repeat parrot fashion what everybody else is saying. So you have the mass that are ignorant, you have the few sparks of that mass that are beginning to see, so they're giving false information, and they run with that false information, believing it is true. Even the lower levels of the secret societies, Masons being another example, they are shown the meaning of the symbols, but they are deliberately given a false interpretation of the symbols. It is not intended that they will understand, it is intended that they will imagine that they understand. And that is a big difference. So when you look at Zachariah Sitchin and Samaria and Nibiru and the Anunnaki come down from this planet, you are basically repeating the false light. It is not the truth.
No.
You know, and that is where humanity has gone wrong. It has believed the wrong captains. It has jumped on the wrong ships.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that. And it was said at the time that Zachariah Sitchin was a gatekeeper of the true knowledge. And we've actually still got, I mean, I'm not going to name names, but there are actually people, quite big names in the kind of the old community in America who are gatekeepers. They're still gatekeepers. And they're not coming out and actually offering, because you know, I always feel people should be informed. You know, I think that there should be a sharing of this information. I mean, I said this the other day in an interview, but I did a talk recently and I just put hands up in the air who knows about the pineal gland, and everybody put their hand up, and I thought that was brilliant, because you know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, if I'd say what's the pineal gland, I reckon half the people wouldn't have known. You know, so we're getting there. You know, and the fact that we are getting there, and people are beginning to realize that our bodies are a divine tool for, you know, for huge creation spirit. And you know, especially, but like, you know, people still see like, oh, you know, the 33-degree, ooh, it's all bad. But you know, you get into the story and you realize it's, you know, it's the vertebrae and it's the Jacob's ladder, and you know, it's a symbol and an allegory for you know, an ascension journey, you know, and your soul's journey.
It is, and again, it goes deeper than that. You know, you go into Orion, which is really the cross of the church, which rises at 33 degrees. So there's a lot more to, again, what. Yes, it's good that people know what these things are, but they also have to realise that Mr. Google and Mr. Bing are not the complete answers, and you have to look beyond, you know, the doctors of that kind of way. But yeah, it is important. You see, in a mystic perspective, you have humanity that has this evolution from basically lead to gold. You know, the philosopher's stone. Really, it is this slow evolution that you just go and repeat and come back and born and die and born and die. But eventually, there will be one of those circuits where you get it. But they see there is a shortcut to that slow evolution. And the shortcut is knowledge and wisdom, the Gnostic knowledge. Because it is that knowledge that enables you to short circuit that slow evolution and get you back quicker. So knowledge really is part of your salvation, to know. And that includes knowing about yourself. It is the Hermetica, which is basically discussing or understanding the secrets of life through the divine, through the cosmos, through the mind, and through nature, which again then comes back into paganism, the circle, which is the church. It is nature giving us the secrets of life. And when you understand these things, you become what the Egyptians called the Godhead, the walking gods on earth, because you understand that you are the divine in a physical human form. And even scientists in Russia now are beginning to realize and prove that human genetics was programmed in the cosmos, not on Earth. So we're all from the stars. The thing that I hear a lot is, oh, I'm a star seed. All my friends are star seed. Actually, we're all star seeds because we come from the stars. So it is not this elite group of star seeds, star people that inhabit the Earth, because we're all star seeds. And when you start to realize these things, you begin to understand thyself, which is the secret to your own return to divinity.
It's interesting. It's fascinating, isn't it, to think that there's billions of souls on the planet, and they're all being kept in this lower vibe. And do you think there is that division? Do you think there is? Is it? I mean, is it as? I'm not going to say bad because I don't want to be in duality, but clearly there is an us and them in terms of knowledge.
Yeah, there is. There is, because those that got to the finish line first have the advantage that they know all the obstacles of the race because they got there first. As I say, you have these factions that, and the recent coronation of King Charles III was full of symbolic rivalry in a public place, although it was invisible because people didn't understand the symbology. We have these rival factions where politically they are disunified, and they all want this, and they all want the power, and they all want this. You have, as I say, you have the ones that wanted to tell you but couldn't. You have the ones that know but don't want to tell you. So you have this battle of, okay, how am I going to tell someone without it bringing my demise? I will encrypt it. I will encode it, because I know that in a far time future, people will begin to have the eyes and the ears to see and hear what I am saying. So you preserve your life, you preserve your knowledge in coded form. That is your pyramids, that is your Stonehenge, that is your Leonardo da Vinci paintings. Those are all the people that wanted to tell you but couldn't have the time. And there is the factions of those who want to have this knowledge to their advantage, to put themselves on this pedestal as the elites of the world, the chosen race. You go to Israel and they believe themselves to be the chosen race. Utter nonsense. It's a section of the community saying we are God's chosen, and it says so in the Bible. But the Bible is written by those who said that they are the chosen people.
Yeah.
It's like me saying, I am the greatest in the world, I am fantastic, but it's me that's written the book.
Yeah.
So of course I'm going to reflect myself in a good light. Now the whole of history is a lie that's agreed upon. And when you start to look beyond the lies, look beyond the veil at the actual truth, when people like me in the past were speaking like I am speaking now, I was an enemy of the church. Now, science, astronomy, Gnosticism, paganism, all these things were deemed to be enemies of the church. The biggest enemy of the church is truth. So if I can take all of these offences and I can put it under the bubble of heresy, if anyone speaks outside of the scriptures, you are a heretic and you are put to death. Some people chose to speak out and were put to death. Some people chose to encrypt the knowledge that they knew, as stated.
Yeah.
But when you become an enemy of the church or the enemy of the state, when you walk into a church, you'll see pictures of kings and queens on church walls. That is a reminder that the church and the state are the same thing.
Yeah.
And if you step outside of the scriptures, if you present yourself as your own pope and try and interpret the scriptures yourself, you are an enemy of the establishment.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a dangerous place to be. I mean, I think we've got a bit of herd mentality these days because there's a lot of people who are standing up and speaking of the truth. So there is more information out there because more people are standing up. But certainly, when there was real control systems, I don't think, I mean, there are control systems now, but I think there is much more freedom of knowledge than there's ever been. If we look at some cultures, I mean, when the Inquisition was going on, you had to flee, physically flee, and physically get out of the environment because they come and get you. Because you, just like you said, you were something that it's a bit. Darren Joji said it. He said if you're an ant and you're one type of ant and you're in a whole group of other ants, they'll all look at you and go, "You're not one of us." So. But I mean, it's interesting with the Western tradition and the East and the sort of Eastern traditions of these mystery schools. they've all been they've tried to wipe them out. I mean, I say they, but over the years, and certainly even with Freemasonry, it's obviously been hijacked. There's obviously huge amounts of initiatory, beautiful things going on there, but it's just been hijacked because it was the mystery school of the West. I'm right, aren't I? So
Well, the West calls it the Holy Spirit. The East calls it Kundalini. It's basically like you saying crimson and me saying red.
Yeah.
But again, they're talking about the same things in different ways.
Yeah.
You have the burning of the heretics and the burning of the books. If you destroy the knowledge and the literature of your opposition, there's no opposition. Yeah. Because where can people go to find out an alternative view if the only one that is presented is yours? And that really is what society has become. Now, there's a lot of these groups that had to flee, that had to hide. And that's the basis of secret societies going underground. Christianity was once a secret society. Yeah. It practiced underground. It had its symbols, such as that one, the fish, that it presented to fellow members. The word fish means the mouth of man. And it is through the mouth of man that you speak of your beliefs, you speak of your convictions. So the little fishes, the Christians, were an underground society that just happened eventually to become an accepted state religion. So these things do go underground, and people do keep it amongst themselves for self-preservation. And they do control behind the scenes much of what goes on in the world. And these societies, these people do not disappear. They reappear as something else. When you look at people who said to me, okay, you're saying that this Egyptian civilization was the pinnacle of the world, so why did they disappear? Well, they haven't disappeared. No. They're in every secret society. They're in every code of scripture, of spiritual buildings. Yeah. Christianity itself, the original Bible, is the Giza Plateau. So they have not disappeared, they've re-emerged. You say that the Knights Templar, for example, well, they were exterminated by the Vatican. No, they were not. Look at the Red Cross. Look at St. John's Ambulance. Look at the city of Bath. Look at Roslin Chapel. Look at all of these places that still have the Knights Templars. When you look at Bath, which is St. John's Hospital, St. John the Baptist, who was really their saviour, their Messiah, not Christ. The postcode of Bath is BA1 1SQ. The 1SQ is the 1 square mile of Jerusalem. They are still here.
That's fascinating.
Now, there is Les Templiers sont parvis est. The Templars are around us.
Wow.
They don't disappear. They reinvent. They come under a different name, under a different symbol, under a different means, but they are still there.
I heard that the Sanhedrin was still active.
The what? Sorry,
the Sanhedrin. Do you know anything of that? Because I heard that was literally still, a seat of power.
Everything is still active.
Yeah.
The Great Pyramid is still active. Stonehenge is still active. Yeah. Stonehenge is a star map to find the Rock Star, our origins. Yeah. Again, it is the original church, the stone circle, the Circe. So it is all active, although some of it remains dormant until it's reactivated. Right. And a lot of the keys to reactivate are sonic keys through the voice, through the fish, through the mouth of man. Mm. And they are all to be reactivated. Mm. When you look at the key of Solomon is Orion. Orion represents John the Baptist, because Orion is Osiris, who was decapitated as well as dismembered. And that is the veneration of St. John the Baptist, which relates to Mary Magdalene, the water of life, the baptismal font. All of these different rebirth things that John the Baptist is who the Merovingians, the Priory of Sion, the Knights Templars really venerate, not Christ. So you have the Christ line, which is the tribe of Judah, and you have the Merovingian Knights Templar Priory of Sion line, which is the tribe of Dan. The tribe of Dan are symbolised by the bee, and the tribe of Judah, Judah means lion. So when you see things in the likes of Judges 14:14 that says, "From the eater came forth meat, from the strong came forth sweetness," what that is telling you, which was a cryptic Samson riddle, is that the beehive was created in the carcass of the lion. So the tribe of Dan will eradicate the tribe of Judah, which is the Jesus line. You have this rivalry where Saint Paul or Saul created the character Christ based on Gnostic Illuminati self-divinity to undermine the power of the Roman Empire, which eventually became Christian. So it was, Christ is a personification of Gnostic Illuminati teachings of self made into a person, a walking God on earth, which is all of us. And then you have the John the Baptist cult, which is the likes of the Merovingians, the Priory of Sion, the Knights Templars, and so on. And they are doing battle. And when you look at the King Charles III coronation, that battle was symbolic in the clothing, in the rituals that went on during the coronation. It is a public battle, but it's hidden in symbols.
That's really fascinating, because just earlier today, I was talking about Hogwarts. And I said Hogwarts is like a microcosm of the battle that's going on, where they're all sat in the room and they all know they're there.
Yeah.
They're all there, they're both on, they're both fighting each other, but they're sat across the table, doing battle in open sight. So yeah. Can I just ask you about the idea of the innocents? That there's always the innocents who are kind of the ones that get caught in the crossfire. Do you have any thoughts on that, or is that just a metaphor for the innocence of the state of mind? Because it seems to me, Mike, just to say, it seems to me that I always say that what's happening in the world is there's like a super mafia, and there's all these little mafias all fighting each other. That's the way I put it.
Yeah. You see, you have a positive, negative, and neutral, which is the universal fabric.
Yeah.
So you're going to have the two opposing parties, and you're going to have the mediator between the two. You're always going to have the innocent bystander. You're always going to have the person in that place of silence, that place of quiet.
Yeah.
But it is that place of quiet that enables the two opposites to interact and not to annihilate each other. Yeah. So you always have to have one of the three, which is the basis of the universal fabric. So absolutely, you will always do that. Yeah. You will always have that.
Yeah, yeah. And do you think what's happening at the moment is there is just that one particular faction, or one consciousness, or one of those battles, one of those tribes has just gone too far, and they're just really like going for it? Is that what's happening?
People are basically playing it for real. It's almost if you start as a dualistic game, but then you forget that you're playing in the game, and you start doing it for real, and you start to believe that this is an absolute reality, and you have the absolute right, and you are the absolute elite, and you are the absolute everything. So you basically got lost in the game. And when you get lost in the game, you play the game for real. When you step back and realize, as I've said, we're all part of the same lineage, we're all part of the same cosmos, we're all part of the same essence and origin. That is a higher state of mind. You have the high council, which is the higher mind, and you have the carnal mind, which is the lower mind, which society keeps you in with your idolization worship and your putting pop stars on the wall and putting pictures of Christ everywhere. That is the carnal lower mind that humanity is kept in. But the people who are keeping humanity in that are the ones who are playing the game for real. The false matrix, the negative agenda that keeps you in that place. But when you step back and you start to look at things from a more panoramic view, then you begin to see that the game is really a game. It's an illusion. And we are descending to experience a human experience. But at the end of it, we go to different vibrations, we go to different frequencies, which are really the spaces between worlds. So we all come from the same place, we all go back to the same place. It's just that when we are in the arena, surrounded by the audience, we get lost in the game.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of putting it, actually. It's like, you know, they've just overplayed their hand, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
The power's gone to their head, and they think that they can. Because I was saying today, you know, we're in the Love Brigade, right?
Well, they're trying to keep us in the Love Brigade, but many of us are starting to, you know, like the flowers that push up against.
Yeah.
Come through the soil. You know, we are.
Yeah.
Taking our place in the forest.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. No. It's really interesting, isn't it? You got to get on the edges. You really go, like, push up against actually what's happening and say no. You know, I like the way that you talked about the sovereignty, because, you know, in this kind of great awakening, or this, you know, this movement that supposedly we've got, where people are not waking up.
It's like it's the battle of the trees. I mean, the trees are highly significant. You know, we are basically the upside down tree when our roots are in heaven and our branches are on the earth. So we are basically the inverted tree, and trees are very symbolic because we are the tree of knowledge. We are the tree of good and evil. And when we balance ourselves, when we realize our truth, we enable ourselves to ripen our fruit to perfection. And when we ripen our fruit to perfection, we are allowed to eat from the Apple Corporation. So it's all about the knowledge of yourself. So we are really the tree. But there is a battle of the trees. Now, the oaks are large, the maples are very small. The maples want more light, and the oaks say, be satisfied with what you have. And the maples chop down the oak trees to get themselves more light. The little man brings down the big man at some point, because they start to demand more. They start to realize that we are allowed to have more here. And when you look at the Fibonacci sequence of nature, when a plant grows, for argument's sake, the lower set of leaves will be in a certain format. The second layer of trees will be in the gaps of the bottom, and then the third will be in the gaps of the second, and the fourth will be in the gaps of the third. So the light gets to all levels. Now, if we look at humanity as the Fibonacci of the plant, then light will eventually get to us once we realign and reposition ourselves. It is nature. It is the way it is.
That's all we're really doing at the moment. We're just going back into balance.
Yes.
And finding the middle way.
We are. And when we find that balance, because nothing happens without balance. If you take the New Age or the New Cage perspective, when I've been told many times, concentrate on the light, not the dark. But that's an imbalance. And if there's an imbalance, there is no purity, there is no divinity. In the same way that the Bible tells me that on the fourth day, God created visible light. Now, when you bring critical thought into that, if God created visible light, then he or it or she must have been in a place of darkness. So while the New Age telling me not to concentrate on the darkness in my pursuit to my return to God, when God itself created visible light from dark.
Yeah.
And that is critical thought, and even some of the most intelligent people on the planet have no critical rational thought.
No, I totally see that. And actually, I'm quite fortified by the fact that there are less people saying just concentrate on the light. I think there are lots of people who've learned, you know, one of the big things that I think people have learned is the shadow work. I don't think people talked about that. That's another subject that people didn't necessarily talk about. And if you were in the self-development community, or you know, working in the field with with the allegories and the symbols and stuff, you might talk about that. But people are talking about shadow work and going inside and balancing things up. You know, so
what is your shadow self? Satan or Satanus? That is your shadow self. That is the dark side of you. That is the Lord of matter. You know, if you, as the Bible calls you, a Philistine, where you are materialistic, you are in the satanic consciousness, because it is the law of matter. The dark part of you is Satan, but the light side of you is spirit. But they must unify in order to create balance, because they are all different octaves of the same stick.
Yes.
And humanity has become out of tune. Now, when we put ourselves back in tune, we will vibrate at the octaves of sanctity, which is originally what the church was doing. It was realigning you with its geometry, with its octaves, with its amplification of sound.
Yeah.
It was realigning you. It just went the wrong way because the people that didn't want that to happen began to change it, began to change the frequencies, the words of the hymns, and everything else. The word hymn comes from hymen, which is the cosmic womb, which is where we all come from.
Yeah, that is fantastic. That's fantastic. I was going to ask you. I don't know whether you know about. I wanted to talk about Switzerland actually. I'm not quite sure why, but there's a huge amount of very open symbolism in the world, isn't there? Yes. Everywhere we go, and for yourself, it has this kind of repository of information who can draw on those. But Switzerland occupies a very interesting place, doesn't it? Because it puts itself out as being neutral, but it's nothing but neutral. And it has that lovely cross.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to ask you what your take on why, I've not been to Switzerland, but I do have a friend who's Swiss, and he says there's just tons of this, just everywhere you go, right? Because there's a lot of clarity in Switzerland.
Mm.
That it's not busy, and you see buildings and it's just got these amazing symbols everywhere. So have you got any take on
the symbols? Is a secret hidden language of the world.
Yeah.
It is a highly advanced language because every sound is a shape and every shape is a sound. That comes back to the word. In the beginning was the word, which is sound. When you look at the word stone, it means father and son in Hebrew. Now, when you get the word son, it gives you sonic, it gives you sound, it gives you resonance. So everywhere, every single place in the world, you have this secret advanced language, which is codes and symbols. And it emits a frequency that connects to you. And when you hit a certain pitch, a certain sound, it raises you to a different level of creation. So these symbols are all over the world, because as I said, there are those in all corners of the world that understand these secret teachings. So therefore, they're putting their brand, their signature, all over the planet, where they are, where they've been, where they're going to be. That is why there is so much symbology in every country, including Switzerland. The cross itself has different meanings. On the one hand, it is the body, and you have to sacrifice your physical in order to resurrect your spiritual, which is Jesus on the cross. You have the Knights Templar cross, which is the sacred geometry of the photon of light. Light is what gives us enlightenment. In Golgotha, in the place of skulls, that is the temple, the Templars. It is there. And there are 22 bones of the skull, and that is why the number 22 is significant. In Mystic Secret Society circles, they're talking about this. The Golgotha, where you crucify your Christ. So it is everywhere in the world. Switzerland, Sweden, Germany, France, wherever you want to name it, it is there.
It's amazing because there's that phrase, I don't know where it came from, but symbolism will be their downfall. First of all, we don't know who they are, but is that a false statement? I mean, how do you see that? Because you'll see that phrase in a very different way to me, but it's been used. I think it was in the Q movement actually, but you've heard that phrase before.
When what you fight, you become.
Mm.
And when you have this secret language that up until now, really, very few people have been able to understand, you kind of have an advantage. But when more and more people begin to speak the language, then you have less of an advantage. And when people understand what has been kept a secret from them for thousands of years, they are now on a level pegging with those who have kept it from them. So eventually, it will lead to their downfall because we will be on a level playing field of understanding.
Yeah.
If you understand codes, symbols, and ciphers, nothing can ever be hidden from you. If I was to go to America and say, what does that mean? Everyone says, oh, it's what the president does. It means hand over heart, I love you, or whatever. Our president does that. Left arm down the side of his body, right palm across his chest. It means love. It means it's the symbol of the president. No, it doesn't. It means there is much to see and hear, little is to be disclosed. That's what it means. So basically, there are those who know, we're not going to tell you. And we'll remind you of that fact, even though you haven't got a clue what I'm saying.
Yes.
I will remind you of that fact, that we know, you don't.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a kind of titillation for them, because they have all of these adoring fans in the crowd waving Union Jack flags with no understanding of what it is. These people who don't have no understanding of this, and they're there saying, look at you, you are loving us, and yet look what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But when you begin to understand it, they can no longer do it, and it will be their downfall.
Yeah. That's fascinating. So in effect, the majority of public life is full of these symbols that the vast majority of the population won't have any idea. Even to even simple ones. So Michael, our time is up. You know that. And I don't want to stop. I really don't want to stop because you've really activated me, and you've given me some real great keys and codes to go away with. But I'm just going to ask you one more question, really. Your work is very much an opening of these doors, and just giving people little dots with which they can connect with. What would you say to somebody who wanted to kind of open up in a more sort of focused and concentrated way? Is there anywhere that you would point somebody? And I know that you've probably got much more deep and meaningful answers than go away and find a book, but what is your answer to that, for somebody who truly...
My answer really is to begin to look beyond 5th century reality and still yourself away from the noise and the chaos, and sit down and ask and see what comes in. Because the world is so noisy that people can't hear. They can't hear what's going on. They can't understand the meaning behind the meaning, the history beyond the history, because everyone's just rushing around in complete noise and chaos. So sit down, listen to yourself, go beyond the 5th century reality, and listen to what the universal library is saying. And if you go onto the likes of Google or anything else, be mindful of the fact that symbols are explained, but they're deliberately misinterpreted or deliberately misinformed. So you have the certain truth movements that will swear blind that Baphomet is the sign of the devil. It is not. You'll have the truth movements that say that is 666, the sign of the devil. It is not. Because what's happened is the elite forces know that there are going to be certain fractions that begin to see what the masses can't see. So they give them something to keep them occupied, which is also false. And then they create these truth movements based on falsity. So going with an open mind to, I'm reading these things, but really it is trying to tell me something else. And just feel your way to what that something else is.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Michael. I'm going to love you and leave you. But thank you so much for your time. And I'm really looking forward to the celebration. And I know that you're going to do a great presentation and cast your light and your wisdom and your darkness as well, because we need a little bit of that. You know, it's always good to shine the torch in there and see what's going on. So thank you very much for joining us today, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. You take care.
Thanks.